Hi everybody. Today I want to talk about something really serious, and that's Star Wars. Now, Star Wars, obviously the new trailer has come out, and it features among other things a three-pronged lightsaber, or a lightsaber with light up crossbars, which is pretty cool. So that's exciting, that's excited me, but it's a whole year though until we're going to get to see this new film, which is good. There's some things I've noticed about Star Wars over the years. Princess Leia, let's face it, is a racist. And the reason I think she's a racist is because she calls Chewbacca a walking carpet in the first movie. Now surely that is a racial slur of the vilest proportions. You know, she's taken a physical characteristic of someone of a different species, different race, of an alien race, and mocked it like that, referred to them as though they're some object you might walk on, and yeah, that's obviously pretty racist. Now I know in reality the script writers probably just put that in to make they probably wanted Princess Leia to come across as a bit spoilt and a bit royal, so that they gave her a somewhat snooty personality. But that really is quite a, when you think about it, when you look at the Star Wars universe as a whole, when you look at all the other movies and how it works, there is this unpleasant racist undercurrent there. Now, one of the things I've noticed about Star Wars, even if you're just looking at the films, the 6 films that we currently have, which I think are what you would officially consider to be canon, it's pretty obvious to me human beings seem to be the most privileged demographic in the Star Wars galaxy. They seem to be the dominant species, the dominant people in the galaxy, and all other species, all the various alien species, Wookiees and Calamarians and Rhodians and so on, they all seem to basically be ethnic minorities. They seem to be minorities within this, and this is emphasised by the fact that the Empire, of course, seems to be entirely made up of humans. More than that, it's made up entirely of white males, until recently, however, in the new trailer we've seen a black guy wearing a stormtrooper outfit, so it's possible that there are black people serving in the Empire. There may even be women as well. I'm talking about the films here, not the expanded universe quite so much, although the expanded universe, and by that I mean like things like the novels people have written that carry on the story, people like Timothy Zahn and Kevin J. Anderson and people like that have written some quite good Star Wars novels. It's made a bit more explicitly clear that the Empire is quite racist, and the Empire is very pro-human. They're almost like sort of, I suppose, if like human nationalists, that's probably the wrong word, but human supremacists would be the better word. They clearly believe in the supremacy of the human race over other races in the galaxy. Now, the reason it's all mostly, if you look at the first film as well, you notice, and by the first film I mean what we now call the 4th film, confusingly, if we look at Star Wars Episode 4, A New Hope, originally just called Star Wars, the Rebel Alliance seems to mostly be white men as well, although not entirely. I'm talking about the first film here. One of the things I quite liked about Return of the Jedi, although it's maligned a bit by fans of the series, is that the Rebel Alliance starts to look a bit more like it should, a bit more like you'd expect a kind of political active movement to look. It's got members of different species, different races within it. It's a bit more multicultural, and you're actually starting to see something that looks a little bit more like it might be fighting against some kind of racist, supremacist tyranny. And in the first movie, I mean, which mostly just humans, aliens in the first movie are kind of background characters. Mostly they occasionally involve themselves, but predominantly it's human beings. Now this was probably, of course, originally done for reasons of budget. They just think, well, it's easier if we don't have to make all the characters up and make them look like aliens and put latex masks on them or whatever. So we have that. Why they were mostly white, I don't know, although I wouldn't be surprised if there was a certain amount of racism involved in casting. I know Gene Roddenberry, who of course was the creator of Star Trek, he actually said one of the problems people had with the original pilot he did for Star Trek which was the cage, was that he'd refused, it was their words, he'd refused to cast it sensibly, which basically meant that he hadn't put all whites in there, he'd included people of other races, which apparently was not considered a good idea in those days. It seems horrifying now. We think, why would we, if anything, we want to get a nice mix of people, different peoples into a TV show, but Star Wars, of course, has been a bit later, late 70s, but even so, it wouldn't surprise me if there was an element of racism involved in that. So although that's a bad thing, though, backhandedly it makes the show, the series of films much more interesting in a way, if you think about it, because now we've got this idea of a human supremacist movement, which may just originally have just been done with all white humans, possibly because of, one thing, restraints of budget, and also a certain amount of racism in casting, and I suppose sexism in casting as well. But it actually makes it really interesting. The Empire looked like a real, supremacist tyranny because of that. Because they seem so monolithic, it's all this one type of person. There seems to be this very hierarchical structure with white male humans at the top, and then of course we seem to be going down this hierarchical ladder. In some of the expanded universe of Star Wars, there are actually some non-humans involved in the Empire that are part of the Empire. There's a character called Grand Admiral Thrawn in Kevin J. Anderson's series of books. He's introduced in a book called Heir to the Empire. He's a humanoid, but he's non-human. But he's the exception that proves the rule, though. That's how he's portrayed. He's this non-human who has somehow bizarrely risen up to the higher ranks of the Imperial fleet. And so he's actually introduced as an exception that proves the rule kind of character. He's the one that stands out. He's the token non-human almost in the higher ranks. And so, yeah, I just think that's an interesting theme. But I think the Princess Leia being a racist probably wasn't something anyone thought about at the time. They probably just thought, we want her to say something a bit that a spoilt royal princess might say. So she's going to talk down to these people like they're plebs. But actually, when you think about it, that would, in that kind of galaxy, be considered a very racist thing to say. But that makes the series in a way more interesting again. Suddenly it shows that there is this human supremacist attitude that may, not just within the Empire, it may well have been present in the Old Republic as well. The Republic may well have had this, and that might be why someone like Leia, even though she's been raised by pro-Republic adopted parents on Alderaan, she might still have a certain prejudice towards non-humans. Although obviously as the series goes we see that disappear. Her and Chewbacca become very good friends. So yeah, that's an interesting thing. So I think it's interesting how somehow just budget restraints and possibly and all that kind of thing may have meant they had to put more humans into Star Wars than aliens just to keep the budget restraints going. So we have to have more human characters. But oddly, it does create this interesting texture of a sort of human supremacist galaxy, with human beings being this dominant species throughout the galaxy. Notably as well, I mean, that they don't seem to have a home world in Star Wars, and as I understand it, that's supposed to, in the expanded universe, I think it's been detailed that that's forgotten knowledge, where humans are supposed to have come from. Humans in Star Wars, of course, all speak the Queen's English, and they also, they must have evolved from primates, basically. It's very difficult to say why there's humans not only living in, but dominating a galaxy a long time ago, in a galaxy far, far away. So this is set presumably millions of years in the past. But yet we've got species that somehow evolved, that we know evolved from lower forms of primate on the Earth. But if you've ever seen another film George Lucas made called THX 1138, which is a very, very slow-moving movie, by the way. It's very tough to get through. You need some coffee on hand to watch it. I won't spoil it, but basically, someone I think once wrote a bit of expanded universe fiction. They wrote a book, but it was never published. But it would have created a continuity between THX 1138 and Star Wars, and would have explained how human beings escaped a totalitarian regime on the Earth. I don't want to spoil THX 138 too much. Basically, it's a little bit like Logan's Run in some ways. It's that sort of thing, an underground. It's a very oppressive regime that keeps a sort of dystopia, if you like. They escape from this dystopian regime and somehow fly off into space and go through some kind of time warp and end up in another galaxy, and that's the beginning of human culture in the Star Wars galaxy. It works for me. It's not canon because it was never published, and even then it would have been a book, and I don't think it would necessarily have had official canonicity, but it works for me. That's the best explanation I can think of for why human beings would exist at all in a galaxy far, far away a long time ago. But how they would become the dominant species, that's a different matter. Obviously we have the out-universe explanation of it's just budget restraints. Possibly lack of imagination, although I think Han Solo in the very early stages of development was going to be an alien, but they decided against it. But yeah, although so that's the out-universe explanation, but the in-universe explanation, I think it can make for quite interesting fiction some of the time. So yeah, let me know what you think, everyone. Goodbye. So day 2, where's number 2? There it is. Much better at opening these things. Kids supposed to open these, they're tiny little things. Kids macho man things. There's the chocolate. Can we get it out of the tray? No, I think it's stuck there forever. Oh my god. Next. There we go.